All right. Good evening, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is with me live. Michael, I want to talk about a subject that may seem, I suppose, old to some people, but that is the 2020 stolen election. I have been very onto this and dedicated to this topic from the time it happened until now. I have interviewed a lot of experts on this topic. And I still believe, in fact, I believe more now than ever, that if we don't see our government, the President Trump administration, get to the bottom of this, when we're going to rue the day, because as long as this thing is out there, it continues to be a cancer on our system. The At least 50%, 60% generally of Republicans interviewed on this topic back then and still today believe that that election was stolen. Probably an average of 30 to 35% of Democrats believe it was stolen, and independents as well. I would argue that even more would say that it's stolen, but because of the intimidation factor, the slow slide into Nazism by the illegitimate regime that took power, you have fear to say this. People are afraid that their name might be ended up on an FBI list. They could have their career ruined. They could have their reputation ruined. So people don't answer these questions honestly. I even think it goes even deeper than that. And I think people don't even answer these questions to themselves honestly because of fear. That's how fear works. And it is fearful. They went after people who questioned the election and destroyed them. They went after not just the way that they went after someone like me, which is a small player, by shutting down my YouTube channel. But we're talking about people being debanked, people being removed from the internet, people losing, the law licenses were threatened. People were being kicked, losing, being just defrocked in ways that are multiple and that are threatening and that are intimidating. People were being shunned in ways that were unprecedented, and people were being imprisoned, like Steve Bannon, like Peter Navarro, like Tina Peters, who's still in prison in Colorado, a 75-year-old woman who had never done a thing wrong in her life, who was a Gold Star mother, by the way, and who was put in prison and is in prison right now, and she's ill, and she's being tortured. They didn't, and when I say prison, they put her in the hard prison because as a clerk in her community, she saw irregularities at that election, and she took some notes. She took some pictures of it. She didn't destroy the records, which, by the way, they were not supposed to do, as she was ordered by that corrupt Nazi-like Attorney General there, this evil woman. What's her name? She has this nasty-looking countenance. And the result is that they threw her in prison, and the judge who threw her in prison actually said in the sentencing that you were seen talking to people like Steve Bannon, and you're a part of this whole crazy conspiracy to question the election. In other words, she was put in prison because of her opinions. And her opinions are the same as a majority of Americans in that regard. And so now we have a situation where they are ramping this thing up again. Believe it or not, I hear this when I listen to NPR a little bit, probably just about every day, so I can find out what they're up to. And already they're starting to talk about the people who denied the election of 2020. They tried to overthrow the election of 2020, right? Instead of what happened, which is they overthrew the election. And I think that they're gearing up for, a major attack on this. Now, I listened to Steve Bannon today, and he had on the other day this former judge, Jim Tropis, from Wisconsin. Jim Tropis was appointed judge by Governor Scott Walker. He was a respected legal figure in his state of Wisconsin for decades. He tended to defend Republicans in various controversies. And he was asked right after that election by the state attorney general to set up a delegate of alternative electors in case, right, which is another controversy, people going to prison for that. It was not anything. They actually asked him to do this, which he did. And he's been prosecuted for that ever since. And when I say prosecuted, not only did he lose his position as a judge, but, he's had he's been forced to testify as he's had his phones and his property seized. He's been spied on. He's been, he's lost his bank account. He's lost his reputation. His son was on a family cruise with his wife and kids on a Disney cruise. And all of a sudden the police showed up and they took away his cell phone. He said anyone in the country named Tropin, like his last name, has been contacted. I'm talking about the kind of stuff that the Nazis only could dream of doing to someone who was a political opponent. And he says that this summer, there's going to be a trial in Wisconsin, not only of him, but of all of these electors. These are mostly elderly people who volunteered to stand up as an alternative elector, which is something that has been done before in American history, going back to Rutherford B. Hayes. It's not new, perfectly legal. And he said they've already requested national media attention for this trial. He says that he could end up spending the rest of his life in prison. I mean, it's 7 years prison, automatic prison term for each charge brought against him. And he's trying to bring attention to this. But I think that this is only one piece of what's going to be a coordinated attempt to dredge this thing up again and try to demonize people. I mean, they're bringing up, the January 6th thing, even though it's already been debunked. They're going to once again say, look, they tried to overthrow the government and they should go to jail for that. That's why Steve Bannon went to jail, by the way. And I do think that this thing is it's just below the surface, but it is a battle that we need to step up. I mean, the government needs to step up. President Trump needs to step up.
All right. Well, let me say this, that you're absolutely right. This thing went into high gear, by the way. It was our own fault. If you go back to the election of 1960, which people don't seem to talk about very much, but there was rampant fraud. And Nixon was thinking of contesting it, as you know, and was talked out of it by a guy that I don't admire, Eisenhower, supposedly for the good of the country, quote unquote, which then started this, no other word is appropriate, effeminate Republican response to the criminal gang Democratic Party. And if you add in a cadre of just a horribly corrupt judiciary, which it's just frightful how bad the federal judiciary is, that they're emboldened now to try to get away with this because they can't win elections otherwise. All right?
That's right.
I mean, you as a New Englander are well aware of the fact that the Republicans, even if you believe the figures, are somewhere around 40% or higher of the electorate in the 6 New England states, but there's not a single Democratic representative in all the New England states.
Exactly. I mean, the New England states have been gerrymandered going all the way back. I mean, this actually goes back to the early 19th.
Well, that's part of election fraud too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole word gerrymander comes from Governor Elbridge Gerry, who was a real partisan Democrat by today's standards. and he gerrymandered his state. They had one of the districts looked like a
From
salamander.
salamander.
Exactly, and so there was a great cartoonist who did a picture, a drawing of of the district, and they put Elbridge Gerry's head on the top and some fins on the back to make it look like a salamander. And that's where the term gerrymander comes from. So this isn't new, certainly not new in Boston. Now you have, I think, a federal judge in Texas saying that Texas is not going to be allowed to keep the redistricted areas intact because of racial gerrymandering, which is, of course, not true.
Well, even if it were true, if anything, it's giving more representation to Hispanics.
Right. And also the whole thing was racially gerrymandered in the first place.
Yeah.
Favor minorities. So, the point is that because of that, and because they have to go back to the other districts, while at the same time California had a referendum that undid an existing independent commission that is supposed to draw congressional lines, and that passed. So California is going to be like New England. I mean, they're probably going to get rid of probably most, if not any, Republican. Because of that, the Democrats are probably going to win the midterms because they will rig, both of those states, just like they rigged.
So the question becomes, other than you and me talking about it, what are the Republicans doing?
Not a goddamn thing. I mean, and meanwhile, you have, if the Republicans lose in the midterms, and usually the party that's in power does tend to lose somewhat in a midterm anyway, traditionally.
Yeah.
I mean, this attack on Trump and on anyone who questioned the election, it's going to get as ugly and as hateful and as vicious as it ever was under that rotten Nazi-like regime, whoever ran it before, the auto pen regime. And that's going to mean probably Trump will be impeached every other week, and it's going to be hell. It's going to really be, they're going to lose the whole, we could really lose the whole yard of everything if that happens. The only bright piece of news that I've seen come out, and it's not even, what? I know.
Please.
He's had something good going on, is that at this recent dinner for the Saudi Arabian prince in Washington, President Trump apparently completely reconciled with Elon Musk. And Elon Musk remains, for better or worse, the richest man in the world. He also has access to an understanding of the whole high-tech world, the social media world. He owns Twitter. And that now it apparently is the case that Musk, who played a major role in Trump's victory.
Well, that was huge with the liberation of Twitter.
The liberation of Twitter. He ponied up hundreds of millions of dollars, not just to Trump, but to the Republican National Committee and Republican campaigns. But he also put the digital muscle behind it. Apparently, he's going full throttle for the midterms in terms of money. He's already committed many millions. And in terms of planning a social media presence. So that's the only good piece of information I have.
Well, I think the other sort of good piece of information is that they've some of the Republicans anyway have located the testicular fortitude to talk back. You're probably familiar with this ridiculous notion that was perpetrated by Jasmine Crockett that Lee Zeldin took money from Jeffrey Epstein, which in fact he did. However, it was obviously a different Jeffrey Epstein. And let me say that his response to Crockett was not very polite. As I recall, he goes into all this detail. Yes, you idiot. It was not, he was not polite.
Good. He shouldn't be.
So I think that some of them are being woken up. And the weak links are being exposed. And fortunately, there's some positives on our side. But
Oh,
you
there
said
is.
California, I will tell you, there has not been a legit election in the state of California for 20, 30 years. All right. There is
Right.
no possible way that a state that was pretty evenly divided and did have Republican governors up until 2011 could now become this blue bastion that it is. All kinds of hanky panky going on. Started again with a weak kneed response by the Republicans to, you talk about a stolen election, Robert K. Dornan
Yep.
losing to what's her name, Lopez, who, by the way, didn't use the name Lopez until she ran for
Right.
office and then suddenly remembered that she was Hispanic.
Well, that
Uh,
seems to be. By the way, that was like Kamala Harris was never black until she ran for office.
yeah,
It's the
same deal.
same sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, by the way, I just got a strike on TikTok. I don't know. Was it the California talk? I don't know what it was that triggered them. So
Election.
election. So I've shut it down just to save the account.
But, let's face it, it's not just the elections. It was talking about COVID, vaccines, anything that was contrary to the prevailing narrative.
But I
And you
think
talk
that
about people
the
whose
election is
careers were destroyed, although
yeah.
in the case of McCullough, it didn't matter because he was ready to retire almost anyway. But as I mentioned on this show, how do you go from being the most published cardiologist in the world to now being this negative figure overnight?
Oh, I mean, and look at it. I mean, everyone I think knows that the entire COVID thing was filled with lies.
Yeah,
From the origin of COVID itself, from the Chinese lab, instead we was told it was a wet market, all the way up to the absolute exaggeration of the fatalities of it. When we now find out it was really like probably 80% of people who got bad COVID and died were pre-existing conditions or they were over 80 years old. And, the denial of well-established FDA-approved drugs like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, which have been used for decades to treat viruses, were demonized. And instead, we ended up with the jab, which had all kinds of lies around it. People made huge amounts of money. It had a eugenic side to it. You had putting COVID people, no one denies that COVID existed, but you had the COVID people put into, hospitals, with elderly people, like nursing homes. I mean, talk about really like genocidal policies. And that only happened in the blue states. And the lockdowns and the children getting vaccines and pregnant women getting vaccines and the masks. The whole thing was a lot of lies.
right.
And I think that people know that and understand it. It was used to defeat Trump. That was the whole purpose of it, probably. That's why China probably did it. Then they used it to rig the election with millions of paper ballots mailed out of the biggest junk mail mailing in history. Not to mention the machines.
Oh, there
All
are people I knew that got 3 or 4 absentee ballots in the mail.
Oh yeah, look, I mean, the University of California in Santa Barbara delivered, I think, 3,000 votes, and there was no one there. The place was completely shut down because of COVID.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could talk about that. That's something that's a given. But they still are not only holding on to those lies, but they mean business. I mean, this thing with Judge Tropin in Wisconsin, and then you have, Benson in Michigan, that beautiful Secretary of State with her blonde hair and she looks like the classic Yankee. She's about as corrupt as hell. We know that with, changing the rules and allowing for no signatures and shipping, ignoring the carloads of ballots that came in Detroit. Um, the reason I know this, I don't want to talk too much in details about this, but I actually had an opportunity to be a part of a group call right after the election with her. I'm not going to talk about why I was there,
Okay.
but we got to ask questions, and everybody assumed that it was a friendly group. And I asked a simple question. I typed it in, and which was, are you doing anything to audit the situation in Wayne County, given the amount of reports of corruption there, with ballots showing up at 3 o'clock in the morning and the pizza boxes on the windows? And when she got that question, her face was like, her eyes were bugging out of her head. I mean, oh my God, it was like she turned like a bright crimson. It changed the whole atmosphere of the meeting. Like, who is this? What happened? And, they were like celebrating. Oh, we now are getting victory. We just got news that we won the Peach State, of Georgia, and they're all giddy. It was obviously, corrupt. And
Well, here's the thing.
she's not running for governor, by the way, in that state. And she's being sued by Republicans. They're starting to stand up because,
Well, here's what I'm worried about. Are we going to get what I call crusade fatigue? And for those in the audience, probably understand where I'm getting with this. The Crusades failed mostly because after a while, if you're a French or a Spanish knight and you're all that distance from home, it's like, you know what? I'm sick of this fight.
Right.
I'm going to go home to my castle or whatever, and the hell with this crap.
Yep.
I don't know if that's going to occur, because the difference between us and the Bolsheviks on the other side is they have no lives. All right. We do.
Well, the only thing I'd add to that with the Crusades, I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to just repeat it because it relates to this. After the Crusades conquered Jerusalem, and you had the Kingdom of Israel under the Crusaders, under the Franks, they called them back then.
Right.
You had them, the wives and the children came. It was originally just the men. They brought their wives and children. And the wives and the children decided to go down to the River Jordan to celebrate and have a picnic. And, just there was a lot of kind of exultation at the time. They had just created this country. And so they went down to the Jordan, and they were all slaughtered by the Saracens, which is what they called the Palestinians back then. And they let a couple of people escaped, or either maybe they let them go so they would go back and report it. They got back to Jerusalem. They told the king and the government what happened. And their reaction was to slam down the walls and to build walls. In other words, they withdrew. They didn't go out and fight. They didn't go out and find these Saracens and beat them. And once they did that, that was the end for the Crusades, because, the Israelis have learned this lesson. If you give up and you kind of withdraw, they're going to win. Even Israelis have, I've talked about this as well. You had the Israelis have a big festival on Purim, which is one of these festive Jewish holidays in Tel Aviv, where children came out and the little girls dressed like Queen Esther, and the boys dressed like Mordechai, and they all, they have cookies, and there were some Arabs who came in and set off bombs, and you had atrocious scene of bloodiness and children's heads blown off, and you found the piece of the torso stuck to a wall. And ever since then, the Israelis have slightly withdrawn. They no longer do this. Instead, they have the parties at home behind a locked door. It's not quite as bad as the situation with the Kingdom of Israel under the Crusades. They're not withdrawing that much. But if you withdraw and you allow this enemy to have a foothold, they're going to go all the way. You give them a finger, they're going to take the whole arm. They can, you can't really surrender like that in the face of it. You have to go out and beat them. And the Israelis have learned this. They don't go out
Well,
and
but here's the thing: even the Israelis have pulled back. I mean, the problem with that conflict, and maybe in a sense with the one we're talking about here politically, is other than exterminate 100% of the enemy, you're not going to solve it.
oh, they have to. And when I say exterminate, I don't mean kill everybody. I just mean you have to defeat the actual combatants. And Israel has not done that with Gaza.
No.
They're still there, and they're going to rebuild, and they're going to attack again as long as they're there. They will never give up.
But by the same token, have the Republicans gone balls out against all the Bolshevik corruption?
I don't think they have. And I don't think that they've taken, from day one, President Trump should have somehow arranged, whether he had people in Congress or otherwise, for a complete investigation of that 2020 election. It hasn't happened. And until it happens, they're going to, continue with this narrative, and it's going to get uglier. It's not over.
Well, I think what occurs is that once you're within the system, you kind of get gelded by it.
No.
Now, you would think that Trump would not be that kind of guy, but it might be impossible to rebel against the very system that you're in to the extent that's required. Take, for example, the Department of Education. A lot of people were talking about closing it, including St. Ronnie Reagan, by the way, and he never did.
No.
All right. I don't know what the big deal is. If you want to close it, just close it. Why all this gnashing of teeth?
Yeah.
And so on. But I think it's because you get consumed by this horrific bureaucracy. And I can tell you, as you may know, I spent nearly 20 years living in the DC area. And there were times when I have appointments in the district, and maybe there was one week where I had to be in the district 4 days the same week, and I needed, psychological counseling after that. It was just unreal.
Right.
So if you're part of that environment, it has to affect you.
Oh, look, I mean, as you know, I've had my own run-in with it when I ran for Congress in 2004 against Barney Frank. You get sucked into this experience that's very intoxicating. It's like, whoa, I have the Boston Globe is calling. They want to meet me on Thursday. They want my opinion on whatever. I mean, like, really? It's like you start to think you're important, and you start to get hooked on that. And then you start doing things that would keep that going. I mean, this is what you have now with people like, I don't know, Nick Fuentes, or that schmuck Packman. They come out with these clickbait headlines, or they say something outrageous because it's going to get all this. People are going to suddenly zero in on them. Look, I'm not here to toot my own horn, but I've never done that. I probably should do it, actually. I've been told I should do it by some people.
The only trouble with doing that is after a while, it's the boy who cried wolf.
Right.
How many times do you click on a headline to find out that it was bait and switch before you realize, I'm not going to fall for this again?
Yeah, I agree. And I just have never played that game. I don't like it. I'd like to have influence. I'd like to build a following, but I'm not going to go out and do something so stupid or say something outrageous. I'm going to talk about things the way I see them, and that in itself could be provocative. But I'm not. You know what I mean? It's not for the sake of being provocative. I try to talk about what I see, what I know, and what I think. But you get Packman just went out with this headline about Trump, giving a blowjob to Bill Clinton. I mean, really? I mean, he's desperate for attention. I mean, he's no relevance, and it's pathetic. It's ugly. They want to get attention.
Well, when you're running a channel like that, and I think Dave Packman has 3 or 4 million subs.
I don't think he has that many.
More.
I don't think he does. I think he might have probably less than 1 million. But he's out there trying to
Right.
stay.
Well, but see, that's the magic number. If
Oh,
you once you surpass 1 million subs, you can make a decent living being a YouTube guy.
right.
Um, and as the joke goes, it beats working, right?
Yeah.
So,
But the point is, they will do these stupid things and come up with
yeah,
these stupid headlines as a way to try to gin that
right.
up. And once they're up there, they have to keep it up, and they'll keep getting, I mean, that's what I'm saying about Fuentes. I mean, he is very slick at what he does. He's a good communicator, but it's like he's coming up with these. He's almost laughing at himself with these stupid, these ideas, and everybody, the left absolutely gives him a huge attention because they hold him up and say, "Look, this is the true Trump thinking, isn't it? This is Trump talking. This is MAGA talking."
Well,
They,
I don't really understand the appeal. I really think, and I believe you would agree, that Brother Nathaniel has a much more interesting anti-Semitic station
yeah,
than Nick Fuentes. Uh,
well, he's really genuinely an anti-Semite. I don't think Nick Fuentes really is. I just think he's trying to grab attention. But Brother Nathaniel, I mean, boy, I mean, he's very vulgar, very nasty. Former Jew, by the way, who
oh,
looks
he was
back.
hardcore.
Yeah, and he
And
looks back with
um,
hate and anger.
well, I mean, what happened to him is he went down that road that he started questioning Judaism. Okay,
Right,
so he leaves the religion, but then he starts being this conspiracy guy, looking for Jews under everything.
right. And plus,
Uh,
there's something very angering. Anger. He's very angry. I mean, I don't know what happened. You have that. That can happen to
yeah,
people. I mean, that happens to people. They get angry at the Catholic Church in the same way. I mean, I had like one of my great grandparents. She became angry at Judaism because her father, he didn't want to see a doctor because it was Shabbos, his religious man. He said, "Why
yeah.
don't we wait till after Shabbos?" And then he ended up going up and lying down, and he passed away. And she blamed Judaism for this, and she hated Judaism for the rest of her life. If he had only gone to a doctor, he would not have died. But he did it because he believed in the Sabbath, and so you take it out on this something else. I mean, it's
Well,
and
right, but I mean, where is it written that you can't be healed
of course, and he
to
could
save
have
a
gone.
life on the? I mean, no.
And he could have gone to a doctor. I mean, exactly. There is that. That is a legitimate context. It's in Hebrew. It's called pakuach nefesh, to
Yeah,
save a life. If
right,
it means
right.
saving a life, you're allowed to do anything you need to do. I mean, that comes first. I mean, Jesus reiterated that concept when he was picking, I think of like corn or something on Shabbos, and he was asked about it. He says, "Everyone here is going to starve to death. We're out in the middle of nowhere. We have to save a life." And it's not a violation of a principle if you're saving your life. You're allowed to. I mean, the French play, I'm trying to think, with Jean Valjean. What is that?
Oh, Les Miserables.
Les Miserables. He stole a loaf of bread because his family was starving, and he ends up going to a labor camp for that. The point is, you're allowed to do those. It's not stealing. That's legitimate. Your life supersedes some stupid law, or maybe some legitimate law in the case of Shabbos. But I guess, where did we get on this? Um,
Well, no, we were comparing Nick Fuentes
oh yeah,
to the content on Brother Nathaniel.
okay. But something happened to him to make him so angry. I don't know what it is, but
And interestingly, he never says what it is.
I don't
He
even.
has one
I don't
on
even know what it is. It's just maybe it's subconscious. I don't know.
the closest he gets is why I left Judaism. Okay, but then to become this embittered individual.
That's right. That's right. I mean, if he wants to become Christian, great. That's fine. But his whole focus is to look back with anger and make his entire mission to demonize Judaism. It's It's very strange. But anyway, to go back to our topic here,
Yeah.
uh, I think that, you make the point that are we getting battle fatigue? Are people getting tired of this constant fight? I mean, there's the issue that some people say that the reason that Trump won was because the economy was so bad and the inflation was so bad. Remember people talking about the price of eggs,
Yeah.
and that, if you look at the average person, that does have a lot to do with it. People were pissed off about the value of their dollar. I mean, it was cost $35 to get a hamburger at a diner in New York. That's crazy. And wages have been stagnant since the 1980s. And I think that is a part of why Trump did win. But they're not really, nothing has changed. And I know that I heard Scott Bessent recently say that we're going to turn the corner maybe in the first or second quarter of next year, and that it's going to get better. I'm not sure he's complete. I don't know if I completely believe that. There has to be something done. If there can be the dollar can be brought to its true level, if there can be maybe a drop in some of the prices of not only goods and services, but of property a little bit, so that people could get back into
Well,
home.
consider one thing. You have what, over 40 million people on SNAP, all right? You don't think that raises the price of food?
Right. No, I think it does. And maybe,
especially since there's no restrictions.
I think
Okay,
I said
you
something
know
like
who's making a lot of money on this?
millions. Right.
I mean, you can buy anything you want on SNAP. Luxury items, not a problem.
Yeah, lottery tickets,
Now,
booze.
I understand. How the hell are
Yeah.
you going to administer that at the point of sale?
Well, yeah, I mean, they
Right
buy
now, you call that SNAP card, and that's it. It's cash.
booze, cigarettes, and lottery
Yeah.
tickets. And you could go out and buy like a pack of gum and take the rest in cash.
Yeah.
Right? Or I don't know if that's true. I shouldn't say that. But
you can get some cash back, but it's
okay.
It's not that easy. But
if they tried to tighten it up and only make sure that the truly needy get it, there's going to be such screaming. But they have to have the guts to do that. It's filled with.
I mean, they are trying to do that. They're going to have everybody reapply.
Okay.
And there's massive fraud. But the problem with all of these government programs, I'm not quite cynical enough to think they were set up for the purpose of fraud, but it doesn't really matter because there's massive fraud in all this stuff. I mean, when it was, and you probably know better than me, sometime in the early 2000s, they did an accounting on the war on poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And they spent $26 trillion on these programs since 1964. And the conclusion was that, amazingly, money doesn't cure poverty.
Yeah. It was a war that we lost.
Yeah. I think the cost of living has risen drastically because of the government. I mean, the state of California, the gasoline tax is the largest component by far of the price of the pump. The only reason you're paying $4.29 at a cheap gas station now is that over $1 of that.
Is that how much gas is out there? $4.25?
Oh, that's cheap. You can find it at that.
I mean, Massachusetts, the cost has dropped. It's down to like $2.75 now, $2.85.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. It's all. There's federal tax, but the state tax is humongous.
How did they get away with that in California? I mean, that's crazy.
It's the increasing the temperature of the boiling pot of water by 1 degree.
I mean, don't people it's not just the cost of gas, but that's going to raise the cost of everything. I mean, the truckers have to pay to transport food and service, whatever.
Well, the way that you get people to not look at that is to get them to spend all their effort on, I'm getting screwed by Trump. or this guy's against me, rather than coming to the realization that the government is 100% corrupt and that's who's screwing you.
Yeah,
But
but you know
it's
something.
a bitter pill to swallow because, well, look at your leftist friends. You could lay out a very logical case about all this, and they'll look at it and they'll secretly agree with you, but they will then have to turn their back on 50, 60 years of believing this crap.
Yeah, but the point is that
Most people will not do that.
they are not the majority of people. They're the people maybe that hold the power. But when Trump came into office, he talked about cutting the cost of government by trillions of dollars after the first year with the Doge cuts. And he
Yeah.
talked about, reducing onerous regulations, holding the line on taxes, tariff income. Basically, instead of an IRS, we would have an XRS, an external revenue service. The monies that we need would be raised by imports from other countries, and he really has not done it. Now
You're right, but don't forget, 17% of the American economy is healthcare. All right. So if I were going after fraud, I would go after Medicare, Medicaid, which is massive. Massive.
The biggest part of the budget, along with the debt we pay to the Federal Reserve. I mean, I think that about a third of the budget, or something like 25% of it, is servicing the debt that we're being charged to borrow our own money.
Right.
That whole system is rotten, obviously. But the other third is Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, Social Security, those programs, if they were restricted to the people who put money into them, which is the real purpose originally, allegedly, then that would be okay, even though I think the whole system is bad. But, nevertheless, the money that it's taken out of your paycheck every time you get paid, a portion of it goes into Social Security. You're entitled to that money. Same thing with FICA, which is money going into Medicare. You're entitled to that money. It's your money. Now, we could talk about privatizing it, which I think we should, but that's maybe too big a bite of an apple. I mean, I'm saying that working within the existing program, they need to bring it down to the point where the benefits go to the people who put the money in. You put the money in your entire working life, and then when you retire, you get the pension, which is what social.
How about being able to opt out or make it like a 401k where you have a variety of investments you can make? You don't have to give it to Uncle Sugar.
I agree, but it should be maybe. I think there needs to be some government oversight over investment vehicles because it's too complicated for the average person to understand. Like they have in Germany, by the way, which is very successful. The government does oversee securities, and they do, monitor fraud. You don't get too many of these people like a Bernie Madoff or something. You have you have managed funds. But then people are free to either join them or not, and they're free to decide their contribution. Switzerland, for example, has universal health care, but you're free to pick your own insurance, and you can get the minimum. You have to get the minimum, and if you can't even afford the minimum, they maybe will give you some subsidy. But you're free to choose, and you can choose it based upon your income. You can get the basic plan, and you can get a more deluxe plan. It's completely free market, but there is a mandate. There is a mandate that you have to have it. I don't disagree with that. That's like in Massachusetts, the way, and I think probably all states, that's the way auto insurance works. You have to have insurance to put a car on the road. It can be a minimal insurance, but then if you want to buy more, you want collision coverage, you want to protect the lives of yourself and people in the car, you pay more. But you have to have basic coverage. But the actual insurance is private. It's not government run. You choose your insurance, and you put your car on the road. That's how it should be run, and that's how I think Social Security should be run. Rather than have the money Yeah, they talk. I hear all this talk about, like, particularly minorities they don't have generational wealth. They call it equity. What the, Social Security is partially responsible for that, because if you have a higher mortality rate, particularly among Black men, and a lot of them are not married at the time that they die, the money disappears. If you had, it just it's gone, and that's their entire working life. But if you had that money put into a private fund, that money could be inherited by their heirs. That money could allow them to have a good
Well,
retirement.
right. You're hitting on the major fallacy of Social Security. When you die, that's it.
It's gone. It just disappears into the ether, and they knew that. And then they expanded the Social Security footprint to give it to newly arriving, to illegal aliens. They expanded, like, a SSDA and SSA for disability. Okay, maybe some of that's fine, but the definition gets a little fuzzy, and all of a sudden you get people gets somewhat fraud ridden. Whereas if it was run by private companies, you wouldn't get away with that. Um, I'm just saying that the whole government interference in it and running of it is bad. But that's the system we have, just like we have an IRS. We're not going to get rid of it. So if we have to have it, at least for now, it needs to be brought down to servicing those who contribute to it, not anyone else. You put money into Social Security, you get your benefit. If you don't put money in, you don't, which is, of course, not the way it happens. Anyway.
Well, I mean, so the point of all this was that a major reason why things are expensive is government programs.
Right.
So,
And because of the fraud in government programs, because
oh,
they've gone way above and beyond their original mission, and they've gotten into it. Look at, I mean, we talked about Lee Zeldin. He's doing a good job over there at EPA. He should have been governor of New York, but putting that aside, he, he says that that agency has expanded its authority to areas which were way above and beyond what its original mandate was. And partially, this is getting a little bit better because of the Chevron decision in the Supreme Court.
yeah.
What that decision did was it undid this unspoken rule, which allowed agencies like the EPA to have sovereign powers to decide. To give a somewhat famous example, the Congress said that the government shall regulate navigable waterways like the Mississippi or the Missouri or Boston Harbor, or you know what I mean? But the EPA, under liberal left wing control, got rid of the word navigable. They just crossed it out. So that gave them the right to regulate. If you have a little puddle in your backyard,
Yeah.
they can come in and regulate it. The thing is that if they can bring that agency back under the constitutional democratic standards, the left likes to talk about democracy. Well, what about it? You know, did an elected official decide that? No. It was decided by these unnamed bureaucrats who are exercising sovereign power. Instead of calling it laws, they'll call it something else. Rules,
Regulation.
standards. Yeah, standards, guidelines. They give us some.
And the nature of the system is that it selects for zealous individuals.
Yeah.
I made reference in one of my columns to it had to do with the 60s, but it was a reference to an EPA meeting that I believe was in 2007, having to do with the regulation of ethylene oxide. And the people from EPA it was worse than you could possibly imagine. Because just complete environmental freaks and zealots. And we got into a little argument with them when this one woman, who I won't name, started insisting that we have to regulate it to such concentration. And I said, but that's lower than the naturally occurring amount of this compound in the air. Well, that's what our models say. So maybe your models are wrong, babe. But that's who you get.
Oh, I mean, look, the whole global warming thing is just based on
They've
computer.
backed off on that though a little bit, haven't they?
I think they have because it's all, based on these kind of projections and computer estimates that aren't really, they haven't taken the time to poke their head outside the window and see what the weather's like. It's all kind of like this theoretical world they're
Well,
in.
the other thing is that every single prediction they've made since the late 1990s hasn't come true.
That's right. Yeah.
Losing a bit of credibility, but this is all expensive. And
But anyways, if Trump has to, I think needs to that whole. I admire everyone in his government, most of them. So I think there's a few weak spots, but for the most part, they're doing, I think, as much as they can. I don't know what to. I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and say that they need to do more, but there has to be something done that people can feel tangibly. I don't like the fact that you have these rotten federal judges stepping in and making stuff up out of whole
well,
cloth.
the latest thing was that they want to stop the National Guard troops in D.C.
Right, exactly. That just came over the wires, and that's
And
that's bad. But even that, it doesn't really affect everybody. What really affects everyone is the cost of eggs. I really think they have to do something to tighten up the maybe it's the monetary supply. I don't know, but I think that Scott Bessent and Russ Voigt, those guys are goats. I mean, they're great, but and I don't know if there's anything they can do. And I'm not an economist, but I don't know if there's something that this government can do to just tangibly make a difference for average people.
oh,
That
you're absolutely right. But I mean, you can't negate the problem that when you have this giant organization, it's very difficult to change things.
I know
Um,
it is, but
you have to be ruthless.
they have to be. I mean, they were elected to do it. They have tried to do it, and they have to do better. Russ Voigt, he authored this incredible agenda to cut every agency in government. I don't know if he's done it yet. It's easy for, as I said, it's easy for me to sit here and yammer about it. I know it's not easy to do, but they've got to start. I mean, the Doge, they were supposed to have cut upwards of $1 trillion by the end of this year. They haven't done it. I think they've cut maybe a couple of hundred billion, maybe, but it's not enough. I mean, it's as difficult as it is. They need to step up. They need to have good public relations
Well, it
people.
is very difficult. I mean, the nature of all organizations is that they go bad.
Yeah, but
And if
these
you
people
try to,
aren't bad, and they know where the bodies are buried. I mean, they know what's the score. They do understand this, and they're not corrupted.
well, they know where the bodies are buried, but look at what was done to Trump when he was president the first time.
But it's gotten better. Have you noticed? I don't know if you've noticed this, but every time that they start to dump crap on Trump on primetime news, because I have to watch this stuff with David
I'm
Muir,
glad you watched it so I don't have to.
yeah,
Thank you.
and Tom Yamas and David Muir and these guys who do the 6 o'clock. It's the usual top story is Trump is hiding something by the Jeffrey Epstein. The point is that they can't get away with that quite the way they used to. So they put in a disclaimer. After dumping the crap on Trump, they then come out and say, of course, we are saying that President Trump has not been accused of any wrongdoing. In other words, they're admitting it's all hearsay. But the point is that the reason they put that disclaimer in is because they know that Trump is going to sue them if they don't, because he has sued them. He sued them because of George
And he's
Stephanopoulos.
won.
He won. George Stephanopoulos did what he's always done. Trump is a rapist, he says.
Yeah.
Trump sued, and he won $60 million from CBS. The point is that now they have to be careful. I even noticed this with the German news, the Deutsche Welle, which I sometimes watch. It's an English language thing. It gives you a European perspective. Even they're left. They're even more left wing than the American news.
Well, you talk about Stephanopoulos. and he's closer to your part of the country.
Yeah.
What is this guy's claim to fame? That he ran a losing
Clinton's hatchet
presidential
man.
campaign?
He was Clinton's hatchet man. He was Clinton. Him and Sidney Blumenthal were Clinton's dirty tricksters. They would go out and they would do the nasty stuff. That's what his claim to fame is. And then he got a big gig at the TV station afterwards. Most of those people, it's very incestuous. They're all, they all work for like, the government, and then they go out into the media.
Okay, and I ask you, which I ask you on every show, what is the audience for network news?
The same people that go to the King's rallies. They're over 80, okay. And and they're still out there. But the thing is that they're not quite dumping like they did because, as I said, Trump sues, and when he does sue, I should note for the listener that he's doing that for all of us, because if they can manufacture news like that and make stuff up that destroys somebody, that is a danger to all of us. That I first became aware of this. I mean, I'd always been aware of it theoretically since I started to study politics, but I saw the first real example I saw was the Trayvon Martin case. I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah.
They manufactured a tape, allegedly, that the guy who killed him had made, and they cut things out to make it sound a certain way, to create a narrative, because they wanted to show that there's a major race problem with this poor black man being murdered, and that somehow would reflect on Republicans and it would hurt Mitt Romney. Now, it was who was running for president at the time. And by the way, they kept showing this picture of Trayvon Martin
when he was 10 years old.
Yeah, this fresh-faced young guy with a cute little sweater, when in fact, you wouldn't have wanted to run into the real Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
It was scary. I mean, it was not like the thing is, I'm making the point that whole thing was a manufactured
story. So what are the consequences? It's just with Trump now, who's been fighting this. So then I throw this back at you. Okay, Stephanopoulos cost him $16 million in that lawsuit settlement.
Right.
Why does the guy even have a job?
I don't understand. That's something I would ask. I mean, look at, Dan Rather was fired for a lot less than that.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, this was like, they were the stuff around like Harris putting the words in her mouth to make her look coherent.
Well, here's my theory. He's still around because that's their audience. Right. They don't care this guy's a lying SOB. That's what they're tuning into, to watch a lying SOB. All right. So $16 million was just part of the overhead.
But is that audience shrinking, or is it? I mean, how?
It's shrinking.
But how are they going to justify making? They have to make a buck at some point, don't they? Have to get ratings. I mean,
they're trying to avoid the obvious. Okay, there's a very limited market for TV news at scheduled hours because you can get instantaneous news on the internet anytime you want. The only market for TV news is major stuff that's happening at that moment will be televised. But to routinely watch it every evening at 6 o'clock is absurd, and you have a dwindling audience. But here's the thing. It's like Hollywood. If that's your business, I saw this personally in the music industry. All right. We were approaching major record labels way back when about the idea of digital music. And they actually thought that their business was selling pieces of plastic to the public.
Right.
They said, no, your business is distributing music. And here's a way to do it that's going to cost you a lot less. It's just,
Right. They just didn't get it. They went over their heads. They got set in a certain way. I get how that happens. That happened to me. I mean, my business went belly up because I didn't see how things were developing in the future. And I just
but if someone came to you and told you stuff, you wouldn't flat out deny it.
I might. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear. I mean, as things got worse, my ears closed even more in a way.
Oh, all right.
Looking back,
and that's probably what's going on. Well, we've been doing TV news since Walter Cronkite in 1947.
Right.
So this is what we do.
There you bring up this thing, and I don't want to hear it, and like la 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 la. I don't want to know. I mean, I get that. I think that might be part of this. I don't know.
I think it's going to die its own death. I mean, and it's also the nature, unfortunately, of the industry, because even though this guy took over the LA Times a number of years ago, who promised to clean it up, the trouble is there are no conservative journalists. So, by virtue of the fact that you're recruiting journalists to write a newspaper, you're going to get a bunch of liberal slobs. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
And you can't seem to change it. It's the nature of the beast.
Well, hopefully they'll all go down with the ship, Anyways.
Hey, works for me.
So what's up with the Substack?
Well, I was halfway through writing an article on the origins of Trump derangement syndrome.
Great.
Which is going to tie in some interesting things.
In a nutshell, what are the origins?
Well, it's a combination of it actually goes back to post-World War II. I mean, sure, the major component of TDS is the fact that Hillary Clinton lost the election, all right? But another major component is you have to go back to your favorite subject, the Model UN, this liberal mentality, and the realization that it doesn't work, and you have to get mad at somebody. And I take it back to the post-war situation, where it was kind of interesting. In the 1930s, we hated the Russians, but then in World War II, they were our great ally because our whole battle plan in Europe was we're going to fight to the last Russian, which worked.
Right.
But then as soon as the treaties are signed, well, they're trying to take over Eastern Europe. And so now you have the Korean War. So you have all this unease in the 1950s. It leads to the 60s where we want to change things. And there's this whole dynamic that develops with civil rights and take prayer to schools and blah, 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 blah. And that reaches a head when Hillary Rodham Clinton runs for president. And she's going to be the great new female president because it's very, very important to have a female president. No one explains why, but it's very important to have a female. And she loses.
Right.
So that was it. So instead of admitting, as you just said, that your model is now wrong, you don't want to hear that.
No, I get it. I've been there. And I think it's part of human nature now that I think about it. I mean, just thinking of my own experience, you don't want to know. And the worse things get, the more entrenched you can get. Yeah. That's why they're now going after this poor Judge Tropin in Wisconsin. And they're bringing up the 2020 election, even though it was more evidence every day that it was stolen, and that they're bringing up January 6th, even though they've now identified that the pipe bomb placed at the DNC and the RNC headquarters was done by a Capitol police officer, and that's why they shut down the Electoral College. This is all like they're only ramping it up. You have the Cheney funeral where they decided not to invite President Trump and Vice President Vance. Can you imagine how tacky and how mean and nasty that is? I'm sure they didn't want to go anyway, but it's like.
Well, that was the other thing. They wanted to change the narrative, right? It's not so much that Trump and Vance didn't want to go. They said, well, we know you're not going to want to go, but we're going to first say that you're not invited.
Yeah. Like, oh, thanks. I mean, it's like this a lot. It says a lot. I remember when McCain passed away, I mean, his family, and he was a mean guy anyway. They decided not to invite Sarah Palin, and she was hurt. She didn't ask for that. They called her and asked her to run as his running mate.
Yeah.
And they're just so mean and so unnecessarily nasty, and it makes them look small. The Cheneys look miserable and
Well,
spiteful.
there was a whole conspiracy going after her family and her kids,
Oh yeah,
and I believe that caused her divorce.
probably.
Uh, and the whole
Oh yeah,
idea
they
that
still
we
like
would
him
blame
now.
it on Sarah Palin. First of all, McCain was a bad candidate. He
Right.
was a bad guy. All right,
Yes. Yeah, he was. I know he's a very
and
nasty man. And
and
he's out of pure spite, he stopped President Trump's attempt to reform Obamacare in his first year in office.
yeah.
And in the process, he hurt the country. That's one of the reasons, like we now know from the shutdown of the government, the cost of that thing is insane. And there was an opportunity to reform it. Every conservative could have gotten behind that, but he scuttled it only for one reason, and that's just because he didn't want Trump to have a victory. He was angry at Trump, hated Trump.
Well, he
Now,
was a bad guy. He
yeah,
was
him,
very likely. I mean, let's put it this way, and no one denies this fact. He's the only person in history that is a POW gained weight in captivity.
and also,
Uh,
I mean, there's stories about him like as a prank, he ended up flying an airplane into the ocean that was cost like $30 billion or something like that. I don't know. There's all these. Maybe those are just
no,
rumors.
there is no way that guy would have had a career if, except for the fact that his father and grandfather were admirals.
Right.
He
Exactly.
was a total loser. And
Yeah.
all right, it's one thing to be a loser, but to be raised up as some sort of hero, even after that savings and loan scandal, which he was part of.
Right.
So I don't understand how this guy's a revered figure.
Oh,
I get it why Sarah Palin is a relatively unknown individual, would have taken this as a big political thing. I happen to know who she was because I was working at the time with a guy that was involved lobbying for Alaska. And he told me about Sarah Palin, but no, come on. If you're not in Alaska, you're not going to know who Sarah Palin is.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, my whole point is that whatever they had against her, they called her up and offered her that
Yeah,
position. It wasn't like she lobbied for it. She probably
yeah.
was shocked. And there she is being disinvited to his funeral, and it was very kind of petty and mean spirited, and it showed what he was about. And I think that Cheney also. I mean, what the hell did they have against Trump, really? I mean, is it really that? And he gets mixed
Well,
that.
that's part of the Trump derangement syndrome.
Yes, he
It's
makes
that
that
he's reflecting all their failures.
threat to democracy. Really? I mean, did Cheney not engage in an unnecessary war that probably killed 5,000 Americans? I mean, what the hell is the matter with them? They're like, these warmongers.
Well, they don't learn. I mean, look at his stupid daughter. Lost the election
Oh my
by
God.
what, 40 points? And
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how corrupt, how utterly deranged she was about Trump,
Yeah.
to the point where like they're coaching witnesses at that phony J6 committee, and they're destroying their documents, and just they should all be in prison for that. It was just a complete, abrogation of.
Well, Trump is the anvil that they break their own hands against. I mean, that's why they have to hate him. I mean, people sometimes eventually learn. Hey, you know what? Maybe I was the one who screwed up. But we've all met people that don't learn.
No, and they have a mindset that they will not give up, and it's they won't see how wrong it is about constant perpetual war, and stripping the economy out by shipping everything overseas. I mean, we could go on anyway.
Yeah.
So, Mike,
So anyway, now you've given me some more ideas on this article.
great.
So
So I guess I'll talk to you next week, and make America great again. I'll talk to you later.
will do.